Harriet Jacobs, the first African-American woman known to have authored a slave narrative in the United States, was born into slavery in Edenton, North Carolina. Her father was a skilled carpenter who was permitted to hire himself out, and her parents were allowed to live together even though they had different masters. Therefore, as a child, Jacobs was unaware that she was a slave. Her mother's death and a change of owners for both Jacobs and her father brought her into a family of Dr. and Mrs. James Norcom in 1825. There, as she grew into adulthood, she was sexually threatened by the doctor and was abused by his jealous wife. As a defense against this treatment, Jacobs became involved with an unmarried white attorney, Samuel Treadwell Sawyer, with whom she had 2 children, Joseph, born in 1829, and Louisa Matilda, born in 1833. When Norcom sent her to a country plantation, she escaped back to Edenton, hiding for perhaps 7 years in an attic crawl space in the home of her maternal grandmother, who had been emancipated some years earlier. While Jacobs was in hiding, Sawyer purchased but did not emancipate their 2 children. Jacobs finally escaped the North in 1842, and later both her children came as well. Life in the North wasn't too safe, though, as the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act granted slave catchers to hunt people like Jacobs down. For much of the next 2 decades, Jacob worked in the family of Nathaniel Parker Willis, one of the era's most popular writers and editors. She took care of his children and became particularly close with his second wife, Cornelia Greenwell Willis, a staunch abolitionist. In 1852, Cornelia Willis arranged to purchase Jacobs from Norcom's daughter, Jacobs' legal owner, then emancipated Jacobs, who continued to work for Willis.
Jacobs spent most of 1849 in Rochester, New York, working for the anti-slavery office run by her younger brother, who had also escaped slavery. She read through a large body of anti-slavery writings and also came to know a number of abolitionists, including many white women, among them the Quaker Amy Post, who became a mentor to her and in whose house she lived for 9 months while her brother was away on lecture tours. Jacobs wanted to contribute her life story to the abolitionist cause in a way that would capture the attention of Northern white women in particular, to show them how slavery debased and demoralized women. In incidents in the life of a slave girl, Jacobs tried to do more than create sympathy for her plight. She sought to win the respect and admiration of her readers. Her description of hiding in the attic, her emphasis on family life and maternal values, and her account of the difficulties of fugitive slaves in the North differentiate the book from the numerous slave narratives produced in the 20 years before the Civil War. Encouraged by the success of Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, one of whose heroines is the slave concubine Cassie, Jacobs began to work on her narrative around 1853 and finished it by 1858. She was not successful in finding a publisher for it, however, until Lydia Maria Child, the well-known woman of letters and abolitionist, agreed to write a preface for it. Child became interested in the project, putting much editorial work into the manuscript, and when the contracted publishers went bankrupt, she arranged for its publication. The book came out under the pseudonym Linda Brent in 1861, and it was sold by anti-slavery societies in the Northeast, was published in England in 1862, and received several favorable reviews. The outbreak of the Civil War made its message less pressing, however, and it sank from notice until the 1980s, when renewed interest in writings by African American women and superb archival scholarship by Jean Fagen Yellen, establishing that this was an autobiographical narrative and not a novel, brought belated acclaim to the work.
Other slave narratives, Frederick Douglass and so on, talk about the brutality and the problems of women in slavery, but Harriet Jacobs focuses on her struggle as a woman in slavery.
During and after the war, Jacobs worked with the Quakers in their efforts to help freed slaves through direct aid and by organizing schools, orphanages, and nursing homes. She ran a boarding house in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and later moved to Washington, D.C. with her daughter. She is buried in Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge.